We're used to seeing people helping out after disasters such as earthquakes. Some are professionals, some are volunteers. Volunteering may sound easy, but it can also become part of the problem. We'll talk about that next on Global Perspectives.
This program is made possible, in part, by funding from the UCF Global Perspectives Office, the Global Connections Foundation, and the India Center at UCF.
This is Global Perspectives with Pulitzer Prize-winning commentator John Bercia.
Welcome to Global Perspectives. Who is going to help you after a disaster destroys your world? Typically, the government and industry in developed nations, as we saw after Hurricane Sandy raked the northeastern United States. But in developing or impoverished nations, such as Haiti after the 2010 earthquake, much of it falls to nonprofits and even individuals. One such individual is today's guest, Alison Thompson, whose efforts to provide aid and hope in post-tsunami Sri Lanka are told in the documentary, The Third Wave. Welcome to the show, Alison.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, for those who haven't been in horrible disasters before, what it's like to confront the aftermath of a tsunami or an earthquake for the first time. What are you thinking?
You land and what they show you on TV, it's actually not quite accurate in the sense of they just show you the destruction, but you don't know that there actually are some things still standing. And I get a shock to see there are some hotels and supermarkets and some certain things, but it's actually shocking as well because you just land, everything's gone, and there's usually, when you first land, thousands of bodies on the ground. So it's really shocking to what you see every day when you're walking around America. Mm-hmm.
Now, some of us had a taste of that in 9/11, a terrible tragedy from seemingly out of nowhere. And you were there. That was one of the early disasters that drew your attention and your help. Tell us how you got involved in 9/11.
Yeah, I was sitting at home and I saw that they'd said that a small plane had hit the World Trade Center, and I thought, I can get down there. I have a little bit of background in nursing, and I had a first aid kit, and I put my rollerblades on and I headed down there. And at that stage I didn't know that actually the first tower had even gone down. I started rollerblading about 8 miles downtown and coming into the smoke, and everyone was pouring out of the area, and in my head I just had to get in there to see if I could help people. And then I became closer and closer, and people walking out with wounds all over and blood running down their faces. And I saw a man on the ground, and he needed CPR, so I started CPR, and I loosened his tie. It was a Wall Street man. And then we called out for help for people, and just started walking around, and there was someone with their arm in the rubble, and I went over to help them, and I pulled the arm, and then the arm just came out. It was just an arm, and I screamed, and I threw it on the ground, and just walking around for a bit to see what I could do, but it was very smoky. And then I heard this rumble, and I looked up, and it was the second tower, and it was actually coming down towards me, and I had my rollerblades on, so I just took off up the street and just as fast as I could, and I dived under a UPS truck, and that's what I remember. And after that, it was dark, and I just got up and started walking around and trying to see what I could do. But after the second tower had gone down, there was just no one else alive. And the police started moving everybody out of the area. And long story short, I just stayed and lived in the streets for 5 days, collecting bodies or just handing out water or cleaning someone's eyes. I knew there was a little space for me to work. I was just a volunteer. I wasn't a professional or anything, but I knew I was needed there. And I learned that after the first 5 days, that, yeah, it's not just big organizations and governments. There is that place for volunteer to get in and really do make a difference and not get in the way.
Well, let's fast forward to the tsunami. You had heard about the tsunami, you had seen footage from the scene, and you thought that you could help. And so you, as you did it in the case of 9/11, started out in a very small way and began moving with your friend in the direction of Sri Lanka. But how did you become the team that eventually was at work on the ground there?
Yeah, well, it's Christmas Day, and I saw it on the internet about the tsunami, and it said 5,000 dead at that stage. I thought, that's a few thousand more than September 11th. I think I can go. It's Christmas holidays. I can go for 2 weeks, and started making plans. I only had a few $100s to my name, but I knew people with frequent flyer miles and things, and I talked the boyfriend into it, and we ended up we set off, and we had a little bit of a plan, you know, Google Maps of where the area was, the destruction, and landed on the ground. But at the airport we met 2 other volunteers, and one was saying he's an engineer and he could drive trucks and that, and I'm thinking, oh, that's good, he can set up tents, he can do a lot of work, you know. And then the other guy was a chef, so I thought that's cool, and we just formed a little band. We're stronger together than alone, and just rented a van, went to a supermarket, filled it up with supplies, and just took off to the disaster. And the main city wasn't destroyed, and then started driving down, and then the devastation. It was different to September 11th, that was people were alive, and I thought, wow, this time I can help somebody. I can really do something. But then, thousands of people later, as we're driving, this is too big, and actually, where's all the aid groups? Where are all the NGOs? And maybe we come across some good people 50 miles that way, 100 miles that way, but there's all these people in between left alone. And we just started doing common sense things, you know, okay, food and water. Oh, they need some medical help, and found a little village, and thinking I was staying for a couple of days, just started doing the basics, food, water, and shelter. Bought some plastic inland and started setting up somewhere they could sleep overnight, and that's all we thought about, not too far in the future, just day by day, hour by hour, really, and that's how it all started.
What did the village look like as you entered it?
The village was completely destroyed except for half a little school building left, and thousands of bodies just lying across the ground, hanging out of the windows of trains. I actually found on a tree someone's nice weave, and I picked it up and started playing with it, and it was actually a scalp that had ripped off someone's head, you know, because it was a 50-foot wave that came through and went 3 miles inland, you know, so everyone was just tousled. So it was devastating. I mean, it was shocking.
In that environment, you saw there was something you could do, some way you could help?
Yeah, basically they're all in shock. They've lost 8 members of their family. Everything's wiped out. They just need organized people to come and direct them and say, okay, you men go over there and let's clean that well out. Now you ladies go over there, we've got some bags of rice. Just really to direct people, because they really are in shock and they cannot think. So it's just basic common sense and directing. And we had a Sicilian, my boyfriend, so he'd go out to the highway and stop the aid trucks and command them to come in and do things, just show it authority, even though no one gave us authority. There was just no one in charge. So we just acted like we knew what we were doing in charge, and then they started following us. And we couldn't actually leave, because every day they'd turn up and just look at us, 3,000 people relying on us. So we just knew we had to stay, and we just really went week by week, but then it turned into eventually a few years.
Now, where did you live during this time? Did you have a tent? Were you in some kind of improvised housing? Where did you stay?
About 3 miles down the road, there was a small village called Hikadua, and it had, a lot of it was destroyed, but there was still guest houses. So there was a $3 guest house we stayed in, and it was a little destroyed, so we actually had our own little cooking fire, and we had canned food and that for a little while. So we started living in there, and it was cheap. We could live there for weeks, basically nothing.
Now, initially, when you go into a disaster zone, people are desperate, and so they were probably happy to see you and grateful you were there.
Yeah, they were so happy we were there, even though we had nothing to give them. Like Donnie from Australia, he had just the toothbrushes from the plane, and he starts handing them out, and they were just so excited about that. But they said, you know what, just the fact that you came from your big, important country halfway around the world to just listen to our problems, that's enough. That's enough. And that made us cry. It was beautiful.
So what did you start doing right off the bat? You handed out what supplies you had, and then obviously the work was just getting started.
I was concentrating on first aid because really there were some major injuries, and there was just no hospitals or anything. So I was really just trying to hold people together with duct tape. I had a lot of duct tape and red duct tape, so I started seeing them during those first weeks all over the place. But my boyfriend, he went and traded with the monks. Now we found out some of the monks were very corrupt over there, so he was trying to trade for food. We gave him some medicine for food, and he was doing trading with the locals, and that's how we started. And then Bruce, he's the very spiritual one, he went to got a group of men together to clean out the temple so they could go back to prayer, because that was their most important thing, being a Buddhist village. So everyone had their little thing they were doing, and another person we met was doing magic tricks with the kids. That's all he really knew how to do, but that was enough. You know, thousands of new orphans sitting around with nothing to do. So everyone had their little niche, and we really just made it up every 5 minutes or every hour by hour, but it slowly ended up into rebuilding a whole village.
Tell us about the stages of individuals' reactions to this tragedy. I know initially they're dazed and bewildered and desperate, but that changes with time.
Yeah, the stages of grieving, like everyone all over the world, you know, you're first in shock, and then you start to realize, you know, anger comes out, and all those stages are always, they always occur in the disasters. So they come out of their shock of not having anything, and they start to get angry because they hear about all the aid money being raised around the world, and billions, which actually never gets there. And so they go through this stage of accusing each other and being angry with each other, then they turn on the people who are actually helping them. And, you know, been through many rough times from that. But you have to, what I learned is it's not ego-based. We go to help them because they really need help, and not because anything to do with us and our ego. So I had to end up learning to rise above that. And if they're angry at me because their 8 babies are dead, well, come on, come to me and be angry at me. It's not me, you know, it's not about me. So I had to learn that and go to this new spiritual level. And then it changed the whole game, and I was just a bit more accepting and about everything that was going down, even though that they'd started to turn on us.
And situations like that can very easily become dangerous. Can you describe one typical incident that happened that really made you uncomfortable?
I love animals, and I started to look after all the cats and the dogs and the kids and all the drunk men of the village, because no one else would help the drunks, but they had injuries as well. So I'd walk around the village and I'd have kids running after me, and dogs and cats and drunks, and, you know, they just followed me everywhere, and they became really jealous of anything I did for the animals. And they got my dog, my tsunami dog that I rescued, and she was like my best friend, and they broke her 4 legs right in front of me, and I just sat in the gutter and I just cried, and just to get back at me, you know, something very, very cruel. Mankind can be very, very, very good and very cruel and very unkind.
Did you ever think at some point that you were personally in danger?
I didn't really think about that, about personally being in danger. I heard stories along the coast about different volunteers getting into trouble. But then we started to have murders in the village, murders of gangs in the other villages, you know, coming in and killing each other and that. So we started to become aware. We were sheltered because we didn't know the language. And next time, the biggest problem was I would like to have a translator that really didn't have any agendas, you know, because the ones in the village, they would make stories up, or they'd just make up many stories. So yeah, I found out later, actually, when we were editing our tapes, that there were actually 3 death threats against us, and the man was telling us, look, I'm not going to kill you because you've helped me build my home. But we didn't know that when they were actually telling us. I found that much later. So that was really shocking to hear. But there were different occasions that were scary, especially when the tsunami, more earthquakes were happening, and we didn't know what was going on, and we'd have to flee with the whole village inland, and just sit on a text phone with England. Are we safe? Are we safe? You know, someone sitting in England telling us, okay, it's okay now, it's been called off. You know, it felt pretty ridiculous. I've learned to live really in each moment. You know, I've seen a lot of things, from body collecting to children being raped and everything, and I've had to learn to really stay in the moment. I'm having a really nice conversation with you. Tonight I'll have some Thai food with people. Tomorrow I'll collect maybe 100 bodies, and then I'll go and do this, and then I'll go. You're living in each moment, so you don't bring that with you in dreams or anything. You just be in that moment, and it's really helped.
What inspires you to engage? You're obviously not getting paid. You're not getting any kind of recognition for the day-to-day work that you do.
Unconditional love. I learned that from Mother Teresa. I met her when I was a little girl, and she had this unconditional love to really get there in the streets with the lowest leper and look them in the eye and just beam them love. And it might be the first time in their whole lifetime they've ever felt that moment, and the last time. But just that, you know, just connecting with the lowest individuals or the highest or whatever, and just loving them. And I get so much more out of it. I just fill up. I just get filled up with love, and that's what I really love. And it's my passion. It's my life now.
And you don't find it enough in today's world. It used to be that our communities were a lot more like that. Smaller communities where people knew and cared about others, but today we seem so detached.
We are detached, and it's a lot to do with the computers, because we're moving so far into the future with all this computer and technology, and we're really alienating ourselves. And when disasters go down, none of that works. Basic flashlight and radio. And recently I was on a trip with Sean Penn, and he got up at Coachella Music Festival and said, who wants to come with me camping around America volunteering? You have to get off your computers, start, you know, getting back and retouching, you know, communicating with people, get into the earth, get your hands dirty. We've got to reconnect, you know, not liking something, a group on Facebook. It's like we have to get back and engage and care about each other.
Did you find along the way that you mentioned the dog you had befriended. Were there others that you became very, very close to and then you had to leave?
Yeah, I became really close with a family in the village whose father was supposed to be the thief of the village, but they had 5 daughters who just, I adored them and they adored me, and we just hung around each other and played with each other's hair and swam, and they were like my daughters. And one of them, she was the poorest girl of the village, but the most kind and most sincere, and she is my daughter still today. I'm putting her through university right now and everything, and we stay in touch by internet and Facebook, and now more people in the village are suddenly, after such a long time, are appearing on Facebook. It's very strange. So, but yeah, I'm still very connected to that village, and my heart is there still. There were many special ones. The chief of the village, he was like my grandfather, and he was actually the pot dealer of the village too. Nobody had anything, but he always seemed to have these big joints, and so he was an interesting man. But he was a socialist, a communist too, and we got into a lot of butt-heading because I was just trying to treat everyone equal. I don't ask them, are you a murderer, are you a prostitute or whatever. Everyone gets food and everyone gets help. You know, let God and Buddha sort it out later, but he was always mad at me. You help that prostitute, you help that murderer, and it was always arguing, but in the end we found some sort of common ground.
So you had gone in thinking you would be there for a few days, and you ended up staying almost 2 years. Mm. And at the same time, that gave you a lot of material for your documentary.
Yeah.
Were you thinking documentary at any stage, or was that something that developed as you went along?
As you know, I am a filmmaker, and before I went to the tsunami, I'd been on the Law and Order set, directing, because learning to direct. I mean, I was already a director, but they make you go for 14 weeks without pay to do it exactly like the directors do. So that's always been in my head. But when I went, I really thought I was just going to get a little bit of footage and go back and have a fundraiser of 5 minutes. But over there, I just passed it around. Kids, taxi drivers, anybody here, just a few minutes a day, and just kept the tapes and just kept shooting. And then 3 months in, a cameraman came through from Canada. He was Sri Lanka, and he said, can I film an hour a day? I thought, yeah, it's important to film the process of the rebuilding, yes, but still not, oh, I'm going to make a film. But, you know, so then I had all these tapes. I went away for a rest for a week. After 6 months, I came back to New York. Didn't even watch them. I was too absolutely exhausted. But I just knew we had to keep shooting. And that was all in my head the whole time until the very end when we left. I thought, we've got a real story here to tell. What is it? And I couldn't work it out. And then I'm like, well, the most footage is the 4 of us. And I thought, that's the story. There's the volunteer message. And I kept trying. I had to learn Final Cut Pro in a day and put 500 hours of, you know, tapes in, and then had to cut it away and cut the story down. I kept cutting myself out because, you know, I don't want to be in front of the camera. I was like dirty and sweaty, and you know, if you get in front of the camera, you want to have hair and makeup and stuff. But anyway, I had to get past that and got it down to 3 hours and hired an editor. And Morgan Spurlock had come aboard, the man who made Supersize Me, and it all snowballed from there. And suddenly we had this film, and it was, you know, it was real. It wasn't like lights, camera, action. It was just very real. And then got the message from, I was in Hawaii training my officers for the Tsunami Center, and Sean Penn calls me, and I'm like, yeah, right, it's one of my friends, you know. And he's like, no, it's, I really enjoyed your film, and I really want to show it to the world, and you mind if I take it to the Cannes Film Festival? And I was like, oh yeah, sure, that's a pretty good idea. So then it just went from there.
Wow. So. And now you're engaged in other work, actually having helped with and continuing to help with tsunami warning systems. Tell us about those.
Every few weeks we'd have earthquakes in the region because it's very unstable still around Sumatra, Indonesia. So the people would hear of an earthquake and they'd run inland, and 13, 14 people would kill each time they hear about it. So I thought, something's got to change. We need to do something for our villages. So it's just a very simple thing popped into my head, a radio system where we could just say move inland or stay where you are. And we had a computer that monitored the world for earthquakes. And it was just a very simple system, but then we put it in place and it worked. And we put the alarms on, and it was about 6 or 7 villages then, and we say, please stay in your homes, there's no warning, or please move inland until further notice. And it's very simple. And then it just started growing around the coast because every village wanted one, and it just grew, and it's the only one in Sri Lanka right now. And it's been 8 years and very hard to stay alive, you know, just been paying for it by myself. And we really want to put real sirens like they have in Hawaii around the complete country, because it's the Indian Ocean is sitting ducks. We have the Pacific Warning Center in the Pacific Ocean, but we're sitting ducks over there, so I really want to expand the Tsunami Center around with proper sirens around the country, and I know that will happen. I know it will happen soon.
That's exciting. Well, some of the lessons that you personally learned from the experience in Sri Lanka, have those helped you in dealing with other disasters and crises?
Yeah, many different things, from stepping up in leadership, from what I said before about taking the ego out of it and not expecting a thank you. And we made many mistakes. You know, volunteers, everybody makes mistakes, and you learn from those mistakes. Instead of trying to fix everything and do everything for them, involve them more and give them real sustainable, you know, businesses and things that they can move forward. I've learned so many things, and but I had to learn the hard way, you know, from making the mistakes. And now that I'm in Haiti, I see a lot of the NGOs making so many mistakes, and I can't just go in there and point fingers and say, you know, but I just sit there and I just shake my head and I'm like, wow, that's so wrong. But they just don't know it. They're really doing it thinking they're really helping, for example, bringing all these clothes into the country, but it's wiped out the economy of the local clothes makers and things like that. You know, just common sense things. If you really sit down and think about, are we making a difference, or are we really hurting the community? And those things need to be addressed.
Now in Haiti, are you focused on a single village as you were in Sri Lanka, or is it a broader effort?
Again, I got a text from Sean Penn, and he said Haiti, and I said, yeah, let's go, you know, and found 10 doctors on Facebook. We raced over there, and we actually found this village. We'd been sleeping in the jungle, and we heard thousands of people singing to us at night. I thought, oh, there's a church, let's go find it. It was about 4 or 5 in the morning, and we found a golf course of 75,000 people on it, and just living on it, and no food, no water, and the 82nd Airborne were on there. So they let us come on and work together, and so we were sort of embedded with the 82nd. They gave us protection, and we started managing this camp. I was running the hospital, and Sean was managing the camp. But every night I would hear the rapes, brutal rapes, off in the dark. There's a woman being raped for like half an hour, and men laughing, and I just couldn't sleep, you know. And I kept thinking about it and thinking about it. And then in my hospital each day, I had 2, 3, 4-year-olds that would have been raped, you know, by many men. And so I thought, I need to do something different. So I started an organization looking after women and children called We Advance. It's a gender-based violence organization. And I started to go in a different direction. I said, I'm going to go to the worst part of Haiti. If we can fix that part, then we can help fix other parts. So we went to the slums, and that's where we've been working with clinics with the women and children.
Oftentimes you hear about actors and actresses who participate in the aftermath of these disasters, and from your experience, what do they do? What do they bring to the discussion that helps?
You've got the ones that are very serious about it, and they get in there, like Sean, you know, lived in his tent, eating rice and beans every day, buying x-ray machines, saving thousands of lives, really getting their hands dirty. And Maria Bella too, she's exactly like that. Then you've got the ones that come through for an hour. And it actually drives you a bit nuts, because while everybody's rushing out to meet the celebrity, all the homes get robbed or something like that. Stuff goes down, and it drives you crazy because they have the photo up and then they go. But it's so important because it gets the message back out there, because everyone I talk to says, oh, isn't Haiti over 3 years ago? Isn't it gone? I'm like, no, just because it's not in the media anymore. They've gone off to the new sexy disaster, but there is still so much need for the next 20 years. So every time a celeb comes through, it might drive us a little bit nuts, but then it gets in 5,000 papers around the world, and everyone starts to be aware, and they start to donate again. So it is a good thing.
So are you going to be in Haiti for a while, or do you have a new project on the horizon?
I've just been appointed ambassador to the Ministry of Environment. That's one of the major problems in Haiti: deforestation. There's no watershed, and there's a food crisis. So they chopped the trees down for their energy. So that's the main thing they're concentrating on, is trying to find other energy solutions. But that's what they use. And there's a man out in the forest. He has a tree and he has a son, and one of them has to die. So they chop the trees down. And it's really sad. We're trying to find solutions of planting crops and things so they can use that instead of chopping the trees down. It's very complicated, but the real thing is about the energy of the country. So yeah, when you fly over it, there's bald mountains everywhere. Like you fly over the DR, and there's a lot of trees and beautiful and everything. You arrive to Haiti, and it's just shaved mountain after mountain after mountain. And it's so sad because also the soil erosion, the whole environment's dying, and it's a very serious problem.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Alison Thompson.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you. For Global Perspectives, I'm John Garcia, and we'll see you next time.
This program is made possible, in part, by funding from the UCF Global Perspectives Office, the Global Connections Foundation, and the India Center at UCF.